Today is such a joy. We have Yola in our studios, and her new album, Walk Through Fire, is just amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You know, you're opening up for Casey Musgraves tonight at Starlight Theater, and I have to imagine that that's a pretty good audience for you.
That's a pretty awesome audience. I'm really excited. She's so talented and about all the things that I can get behind, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a real easy kind of fit for me, and I hope all of her fans like what we're doing.
Yeah. You know, we love having somebody just sort of seemingly magically appear one day like you did. One of the turning points anyway for you was Americana Fest. Mm-hmm. And you found some friends, for lack of a better word, in Nashville. Yes.
I'd been to Americana Fest a couple times before I made these specific friends. I first came to the festival in 2016, and I brought my UK band over, and we were all kind of doing the showcase, kind of 5 showcases in a week kind of thing, and the name went around the city, and next time I came back, I got a better slot.
Yeah.
I got a better venue, and I got a better chance of anyone actually seeing my set, as opposed to it just being word on the street. And that's when my name bumped into Dan Auerbach's people, and that was the beginning of a really, really awesome time.
So you had gotten his solo record, and you were listening to it, right?
Yes, that 2016 record, Waiting on a Song, was like something that sonically felt like what I wanted out of music. I remember singing Stand By My Girl, Stand By My Girl, and I was just like, yes, I'm feeling this. And so there I was dancing around. I wouldn't it really cool if we did a record one day next year. Yeah, I meet the guy. Rings. So that was a real stroke of luck.
Yeah. Isn't it nice when life gives you those moments that you just couldn't ever...
It really is nice. I'd had 30 years of totally not having those moments, so, you know.
Yeah, we'll
late than never.
We'll drag you through all of that later.
Yeah.
You know, so the phone rings. Dan wants to work with you. Mm-hmm. You already, you go into the studio, and it's sort of like, what's this going to be like? But you and Dan bonded over your love of music from the late 60s and early 70s.
Mm-hmm. We really did. And weirdly, we bonded over our dislike of the 80s. But it was like finding a lot of this kind of musical crossover, and it dawned on us that there was just a lot of gray area between the music that we loved. And that the story that I wanted to tell was the kind of relationship, the journey from soul to country to classic pop to, classic rock music. I wanted all the stuff in between to be illuminated, because for me, that's kind of what excites me about music, is those mixtures and when people collaborate in that way.
You know, one of the things about Dan Auerbach is he spent those few years in between Black Keys projects producing records, but he also sort of collected people, right?
Yes.
And so you're not just hearkening back to some of these things, but you're also employing the players that were there the first time around.
Yes, in a very real sense. And you turn around and Bubba's like, oh, when was that? When were we having that conversation? Oh, I think, were we with Elvis that time? Or were you playing with Aretha? Or these were the kind of casual conversations that were being had. You can't really prepare for that emotionally, you know?
Yeah. And then it's sort of like, but it's not just limited to like those guys, right? I mean, he brought in Vince Gill.
Yes.
He also brought in Molly Tuttle, who may not be a super familiar name yet.
No, she's definitely of the new school, but she's definitely of the new school legendary status.
Yeah, she is that one that's going to explode next.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And so he's definitely seeking out the kind of new school skill as well as the kind of old school legends, you know.
So I got the sense that this is like Nirvana. This is heaven. This is like perfect, except for one thing:
What's that?
tea.
Yeah, you guys can't rock tea for anybody's business. Sorry. Loving this place. I've been going from state to state going, oh, this is awesome. Oh, they're mountains now. Oh, this is a desert. Oh, look, it's really green now. Well done, America. You nailed it. Everything but tea.
So what are we doing wrong?
Okay, first and foremost, you tend to, the popular tea isn't a strong enough blend. It's not dark enough, so you can't. It needs to look almost like coffee, and then you put sugar in, and then you add milk, and then it's ready, and you put it in China. For the love of God.
Next time you come through, I think we're just going to have to film like a tea cooking show.
Yes, I'll go, this is how you make tea, and then you've nailed everything. Congrats.
Everybody asks, when did you know you wanted to sing? Everybody asks that. And you've given two answers.
Okay.
One answer is that really around 4.
Yeah.
And the other one was that you decided in the birth canal.
Yeah, huh? And it's because I don't have, I remember when I was 4, I wanted to do it as a job. I wanted to sing as a profession. But I don't have any living memory of not singing. And so people go, when? I'm like, well, I don't know, the birth canal. That's how that came out. Yeah, like it's always been a thing. Like I'd sing and I'd dance all the time. And that became something that felt very serious about 4. And I was like, I think I was watching an old video of the Jackson 5, and I was like, how old was he? 5. Have I got 1 year? I was like, this is a real emergency. I've got 1 year to get my whole thing together. Right, okay. So there I am. Like speed scaling just to try get like all the notches knocked in. I was terrified, and then I got to 5, and I was like, oh, other people take longer. Okay, cool. That's thank God.
Well, as long as we're talking about influences, I kind of really don't like the influences question, but I love the way that you've answered it in the past because you don't say, oh, blah blah blah, going down the list. You talk about the artists that you found yourself in. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, Dolly Parton, you heard your vibrato in Jolene. Mm-hmm. Mavis Staples, Tina Turner for your lower register. Aretha Franklin for the breathy part of you. Mm-hmm. And I just think that that's fascinating. And it sounds, you even have found yourself in Elton John.
Yes. Again, it was just that breadth of approach. Maybe it's a Brit thing, but that kind of the perspective of not being here and looking almost out, looking out at America, at the great expanse of popular music coming out of this fine place. And we're just drinking it in, and we don't necessarily see as many borders between genre. And that, for me, I found extremely inspiring because my voice, I had to discover my voice because it didn't make sense. Pop music was happening. What was happening? Aaliyah, Brandy, people of color anyway, that looked like me, did not sound like me in the time that I was growing up. So I was super confused. And I had to go and try and find bits of my voice and go, oh, that's a bit like when I do that, and that's a bit like when I do that. And Elton John, certainly from a musical standpoint, had so much playing into like his sound, like his piano, like every time you think of like the way he's playing Benny and the Jets or whatever, he's in the pocket all day. But then I think of like records like Honky Chateau, and it's got stuff that's roots related, that's country related in there, as well as the singer-songwriter sound. And so I grew up kind of listening to Elton John records going, this feels like somewhere I can be at home,
You and Brandy Carlisle.
I know, right?
Yeah. She loves Elton John.
She does. We have not had our Elton John conversation yet, but I did love her photos. She dressed up as him for a wonderful photo shoot and looked insanely awesome. I was massively envious. I will do that next, but with an afro. It's going to be hilarious.
So your mom was not in favor of you doing a music career at all, but she had a pretty large record collection.
Yeah, it's mixed signals, huh?
Yeah. Well, and the thing that killed me, and I'm sure that this is a nuanced thing, but the shorthand for it was that one of the jobs that your mother worked was as a DJ in the psych ward.
Yep.
I didn't know such a job existed.
Well, what you do first and foremost is that it's not your only job. She was SEM registered, and so she'd go and deliver the meds. She could find a vein in anybody, in no matter how faint your veins were. She'd be like, "There it is, straight in." So she was like an absolute boss at the old meds. And then once the meds round was done, off on the deck she went and did hospital radio. And by and large, playing disco to the mentally infirm.
Did that help?
Apparently. You've heard disco, right? It's helpful. It's a helpful genre. You know, if you're not feeling quite yourself, put on September, right?
Yeah.
Every single time that song digs me out of a sad time. So
Yeah.
I get her logic.
She was a hardworking woman.
Many jobs. She was an Avon lady.
Yeah.
She worked in a checkout till. She did voluntary work for people that had been abused. She'd go around and make sure that they were looked after, as well as, like, she had probably about 6 jobs at any one time.
So she just wanted you to have a job that paid some damn money.
Yeah, that was the logic.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, hey, I'm going to go and do some kind of floaty creative job. And she's like, you do know we're poor, right? Like, you know, the music industry is quite full of privileged people because you can take a little bit of a time to get there because there's no emergency. When you're poor, there's an emergency, and a very immediate emergency.
So, you know, when I think most teenagers, you know, if they lie to their parents, it's to go out and do something fun.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that what you did wasn't fun, but you were lying to her to go out and work.
Yeah, I was lying to work. I was lying to do early tax returns. Everyone was like getting high, and I was crunching numbers and, you know, reading contracts. Like, this wasn't like the fun lie. You know, this was very much like trying to get something going. So when she finally found out, or I just like my lie credits had run out, and I felt like I was going to implode, I could have something to show for it. You know.
Yeah, and you know, the just not having somebody even in the position to be of much backup. Early 20s, you found yourself homeless.
Yeah.
And for a few days, even slept in a bush in the park.
Yeah. I hollowed out a bush. Like day one, I haven't really said this, but day one, like I had a good few things just swiped from my person because I looked like a noob. And so I decided to hollow out a bush and stay in there. Because if they could, out of sight, for me, was out of mind. And I had this big old holdall that we used to call the fire engine. It was bright red. And I'd taken it across Glastonbury site because I grew up right near Glastonbury, or, you know, half an hour outside. For Americans, that's close. Like, I had to kind of, like, muddy it up so you couldn't see the bright red in the bush. So I went full kind of, you know, nature, camo, Yola for a few days just to try and stay out of sight. And then in the day, I'd beg and managed to get enough money up together to get to a payphone and call some people. Everyone was too busy because everyone was that kind of superficial friend who you don't really connect with. And one person was real. And that one person scooped me up and brought me back home to Bristol. And, you know, I stayed on couches for months and months and months and just floated around, desperately trying to get freaking a 50% of a favor out of somebody. So I could get myself together.
You know, the only reason that I bring this up is because of the redemption that eventually follows. And, you know, I think that, like, the strength that you've shown is so amazing to be single-minded about your path, trying to go about it honestly, fighting through all of the, you know, the difficulties that the world can throw. And so we'll get to the redemption. I didn't want you
Yeah.
to think that I was.
It's all right. No, not at all. Like, so much of this record is kind of about that. It's about the kind of the emerging from that stage of my life. I was a 21-year-old at the time. And so, like, when you're that young, you're just vulnerable then. Like, you don't think you are because you think you're immortal and you can drink forever and all that stuff. But, you're vulnerable, And as you're going through that arc and through your 20s, like, you are becoming more aware. And, like, I think it's the most common thing that happens, certainly for women of colour, is that you are assumed like a Serena Williams level, like invincible. And you don't get the help that you need. You don't get the connection that you crave because you're seen as just that you're always going to survive until you don't. And then if anything bad happens, it's just another trope that you've fallen into. It's something else bad must have happened because, you're you.
And in the music business, you're a backup singer.
Yeah, of course, you're supposed to back people up. And so I really fought to not do that, certainly live, just so that the image wasn't there of me doing that. I only ever did 2 live backup jobs. One was for Adele and one was for an artist called Dizzy Rascal. And they were the only times I ever did those things because my friend was the MD and he was really up the creek and I was like, okay, I've got your back, Jack. But that was the only time. And then everything else I did, that was studio based. So I was a session singer for a long time and then a front woman for hire. I kind of spent a little bit of time in Massive Attack doing a job like that, kind of fronting, singing a couple songs I'd written, singing some Shara Nelson songs. And that was kind of one of a few kind of momentary upswings in my stability situation.
And when you did that, it's like, I sang a few songs with Massive Attack in front of 60,000 people at Glastonbury.
Yeah, that was fun. And like, you don't always realize, like, the camera kind of comes on this big arm and I'm like, oh yeah, the BBC, hi. like I had, it was something that almost went by like instantaneously and lasted for a million years, like, it was very surreal. And I'd actually, kind of got a bit of the old camper's throat, so I took a long time warming up. I just managed to get out on stage, and I was like, all I've got to do is be able to get, no much more, and then I'll be all right. And I was like, like literally 5 minutes before I had to do that song. Oh my God. And I was like, that's fine. It's a low pressure show, right? It's only 60,000 people in the rest of the country on the BBC for a month on iPlayer or whatever. So that's the thing. Yeah, everything lasts forever now. So yeah, I had to nail it. And thankfully I squeezed out that note and I was like, cool, that's me.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have the vision of songwriting being the way that you wrote this record, but after having spent all that studio time, you started doing what's called top line writing.
Yes.
And that's part of how you got into the Massive Attack thing. Mm-hmm. You were just doing top line writing for them, and then all of a sudden they wanted you to go on the road. Can you tell people what top line writing is? Because I think a lot of people don't know.
So top line writing is by and large when you specialize in writing lyrics and melody. It's mostly a collaborative kind of job, and so you're very much dependent on someone playing one of these guys, an acoustic guitar, or someone pushing some buttons on a computer or playing keys. But by and large, if you're a top liner alone, that's what you do. You do lyrics and melody. And so I was very dependent in one sense, whilst also looking like I had some sense of agency. And the balance of that is very nuanced depending on where you're doing it, what genre you're working in, and generally the kind of ethos and the paradigm of the scene you're working in.
In a way, you're a fixer.
Yeah.
But
and you can do anything that's fixing.
Yeah.
So you can vocally chime in as well and do like vocal stacks and end up doing arrangements and all sorts of things. You're a fixer.
And so in a way, you're writing songs that turn out to be really popular, but you're doing it for somebody else under their direction. It's probably not really your best self.
Yeah, it's to brief. And there's lots of people in the music industry that write to brief. That's a big part of how we receive music.
So you were also fronting Phantom Limb, which again was another situation where it really wasn't totally you.
Closer.
It was closer. But I have to say, the one story about that band, you opened for James Brown.
So actually, we were opening for Dr. John and Solomon Burke. I was in Bugs in the Attic, and we opened for James Brown.
Okay,
and that
all
was
right,
like
got that
a
wrong.
neo-soul type band. Again, I was the front woman for hire, and I'd go in and, sing whatever the songs were. Like, I wasn't necessarily top lining at that time, but in Phantom Limb, we kind of did an opening for Dr. John, another one for Solomon Burke and for Stack's band. And I kind of stumbled back onto the stage, I remember, quite drunk, to sing Knock on Wood with Eddie Floyd, which was, he's like, come on. I was just like, I don't know, this is a good idea. So I had no shoes on, and I had a skirt that I now regrettably notice was maybe a go short. And, but, it's, feel free. I'm not ashamed of myself. That happened. It was fun. So we had moments of like almost like isolated moments of triumph, but just the worst business sense that could ever befall a group of people.
So didn't James Brown say something to you?
Almost to the point of being able to understand it, yes. You solve the thing, you got it. And I was like, sorry, what, love? Sorry, right, love? So I'm from Bristol, and we actually normally say, right there? That's normally what you'd say when you mean, all right, or sorry, excuse me. Anyway, I was like, here, what, love? And solves the thing, and you've got it. And I was like, well, thank you. But he didn't ever say it that clearly, ever.
Solves
ever.
a thing, you got it.
And I was like, thanks, James. Nice curlers. He had his hair in curlers at the time. He was in the proprietary mode, looking very graceful, as he always did.
Yes. Yola is our guest. I'm really excited about the show tonight. Yola's new album is Walk Through Fire. We'd love to hear another song if we could.
Oh, well, that very song is what we're going to play for you next. It's the song that we wrote almost in response to a house fire I was in. And that moment that I realized whilst burning that I was happy as heck. Here it is, Walk Through Fire. Standing on the side of the river, staring across the great divide, I give all my gold and silver to get to the other side. Your love is like a rescue vessel, carries me through the night, through these flames of destruction. I know you're gonna make it right. I know you're gonna save my life. I gotta walk through the fire. I gotta deal with desire. The situation is dire. I gotta walk through the fire of love. Walk through the fire of love. Sitting alone in my bedroom, thinking about the trip to come. My bags are packed and I'm ready.
That was spectacular. Walk Through the Fire, title track of the new Yola album. And again, Yola opening tonight for Casey Musgraves at Starlight. So, Yola, you have described the first 30 years of your life as crap.
Nailed it, buddy. That's what it was.
Yeah. And, you got to the point where you felt like you'd been abused by friends, abused by family, and abused by people professionally.
Yeah. It was just a absolute show.
Thank you for the self-edit.
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
us Brits, we're a bit more potty-mouthed than you fine people. So I'm doing the edit for you all. All right.
So the thing about it is you were in that position, but you kind of knew it. And because of the top line writing and some of the other things, you actually had a little bit of money now.
Yeah, it was like a fluctuating kind of money. The kind of one that you're like, yay for this year, boo for next year, yeah for the year after. And so like I'd have moments of just being flush and feeling like, okay, I've nailed this, but because there was no kind of real connecting. It was all just kind of job related, it was all freelance. And if anyone's been freelance, that's one thing they know. Like, you're always repitching and repitching and repitching. There was nothing that was my own.
So you decided to invest in yourself.
Yeah, and I had one song. So I kind of managed to get myself out of maybe the most kind of abusive environments around 2012 and 2013. And I was just back, probably in one of my troughs, kind of back on benefits and back life not being great. And I had another kind of pitch for top lining come through for an artist called Subfocus. And then another one probably straight after, another artist called Duke Dumont. And if you know anything about Duke Dumont, he had number one, number two, number one around the time that I was writing with him. I was unfortunately the number two, but still, I was there to be more of a fixer in that scenario. So it was like, can you arrange some vocals? Can you sing the top line? Can you make this thing work, whatever it is that I've presented to you? And in the Subfocus one, they were like, okay, we need you to get in and actually write this thing. The arrangement's going to be done somewhere else. And so it's two sides of the same job that I did all the time. And they both kind of happened at a similar time. And as a result, I all of a sudden had this money. The Subfocus track got to number 10 in the charts at home and in Europe. And then, and that's the main chart. And so I was like, cool, that's me. And then the Duke Dumont track got to number 2. And even just on the neighboring rights alone, I was backstroking in the good times, because that was both here, that was in the UK and in the States. And so right here. And so everything was kind of comfortable. And I was like, right, I can give up on all of my dreams now if I want to and just put in a house and then, carry on. At the time, I'd been doing a bit of lecturing on vocal biomechanics. And I was like, I can just carry on in that vein, doing those kinds of things. Or I can put all of my power and energy into doing something for myself. So I'm never kind of at the behest of anyone else's, you can work today, oh, your whole department's cut kind of situation, And so I just decided to throw everything into starting something, and which was inexorably this thing that has brought me here. When you start out, the biggest problem can always be not being able to make things work in a logistical way, because you've got no money, so you can't pay anybody, and you can't pay anybody or book anything nice, so you can't do anything at a professional level. You can't compete with your peers who maybe had a rich daddy. So I told myself one thing: I'm going to be my own rich daddy. That's what I'm going to do. And so I was, and I made sure right up until the end of 2017, when I healthily dovetailed with the Easy Eye machine, it was Bank of Yola all the way,
Yeah. So you'd started to make this transition come Christmas of 2014, and the house fire that you reference in Walk Through Fire and that you mentioned earlier. But you really sold that short because it wasn't just a house fire. It was also a Yola fire. You were on fire.
I was on fire first. I caught fire and then I set the house on fire with my own body. So, I was like the firelighter to the barbecue.
This is basically all because you're a very enthusiastic cook.
Well, kind of. I was cooking, but I was also testing. Get this, a bioethanol burner. If you don't know what a bioethanol burner is, listeners, it's like a fancy candle for all intents and purposes, but you put a bioaccelerant called bioethanol in it, and when you light it, much like petrol, it goes up at great speed, but it doesn't burn with that kind of petrol smell, obviously. It's lovely. So, there I go. I test this bioethanol burner, and it works just fine. Problem is, the applicator, the canister, was leaking, and so it comes out of the perfectly safe reservoir, it catches the canister, and the canister goes up. And then another little train of fire catches my dress. And I'm wearing a maxi dress because it's Christmas time and I'm inside and I just want to be basically wearing a sheet. Ladies, you'll know what I'm talking about. But unfortunately, it's right on the floor and it's been mopping up some of that dripping accelerant. So up I go. And I realized that I have to find, I'm kind of like, okay, trying to find something to put myself out with, setting things on fire as I'm trying to find things. And I'm like, I need to think of something, because I was blocked from the kitchen where the water was. So there was no way of me kind of doing anything. So I was like, what does fire need? Fire needs oxygen, okay. But I couldn't get to that logical thought of how to put out fire without water. And so I was like, I'm going to have to get past this shock phase. And I was like, what's worse than being on fire that you've survived? And I was like, probably the first 30 years, to be honest. And I laughed so hard, I laughed myself out of shock. And so I was still kind of laughing whilst burning, like, yeah! And I was like, wait a minute, stop, drop and roll, Yola, because that's what you're supposed to do. And so I was in a rug, I kind of like got my dress off and was just like patting and patting and patting until I was out. And then it was just the place that was on fire. So I managed to go outside and get a hose, come back in, and I put it all out myself. And I've got a nice little burn on my arm from fighting it. And probably a little bit, I had some on my hands, and they pretty much cleared up. And, like, I had no eyebrows or eyelashes or anything. Like, I just went back and I made sure that thing was out. And,
Fire department was really impressed with you.
Yeah, they turned up and went, oh, you've done it. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'm sure there's something you can do here. And so they're like, we can do the electrics check. I'm like, oh, thanks, babes. They're like, are you all right? And I'm like, I feel reborn somehow. And they're like, you're probably in shock and you're probably burned and you should probably definitely get in the ambulance. And so I did probably definitely get in the ambulance. And then they did the really cool thing where they give you gas and air and stuff. And so I was like, I called my friend by then and I was like, we're just sharing it and laughing. It was hilarious. But it was, by and large, a very positive experience because at that moment I realized I was happy as heck.
You know, the thing that I love about this story, first of all, your laughter can be seen as either charming, endearing, or deeply troubling.
Yeah. Welcome to my sense of humor.
Yeah. But the thing that I loved about it is that you'd had that first 30 years, and I thought about you in that park, in that bush, all of the friends that wouldn't come to your aid. And when this happened...
Everyone. And this was part of the realizing that I was happy. I was like, I was loved on all sides, and I hadn't really had that in any part of my life. Not from family, not from friends, not from anyone that didn't have some kind of like unnatural dissociation from my humanity. And so but at this point I'd reconnected with people that I knew that had been distanced from a long time ago because, the nice people are always really quiet, aren't they? They're never really like, I demand your attention. Lovely people, they're just there and you find them. And I found myself drifting from those people, and the people that demanded my time, that needed me because they wanted me to sing something or write something or whatever. I got very kind of taken over by these domineering energies. And so I was reconnecting with people that I drifted way too far from. I was connecting with people that I just met who I just had way more connection and more in common with. And like, my life was just full of people that I had a very easy and natural love for. And I didn't have to try. And the entirety of that time, up until, 31, I had not had that authentic feeling kind of continually, maybe little moments.
Yeah.
And that's a horribly lonely and neglected life. And at that moment, I was like, these aren't my problems anymore. Great. I was like, yeah, the house, I can't be in it for a few months. And everyone was like, hey, you can come and stay with me for a bit. Hey, come and stay with me. You can just live in my spare room, like just whatever. And I was like, I had too many places to go, and I'd never had that. And it's why it's so important for me to connect with the people that I'm around and to feel love. Because, if you don't get it from anywhere, especially when you don't have family, like it's... that's all you have.
That's lovely. I'm just happy that you're here.
Hey, I'm happy I'm not dead too. It's really nice.
I did, before you get one more song, I did want to just touch real briefly on one part of the story I think we've left out a little bit. And that's, we've touched on your songwriting. Mm-hmm. And the songwriting that you were doing was enormously successful, but didn't represent you. And so this rebirth that when you became your own sugar daddy, mm-hmm. It's like you wrote a lot. You wrote like 50 songs.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're coming in to work with Dan Auerbach, and he's like, put those away. We're going to write some songs.
Because he wanted to collaborate. He wanted to get in on this party.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right.
Yeah.
I'm here to conversate, to get involved, to connect. Like I was writing myself fit in those 50 songs a lot of the time,
Right.
And then there are ones I wrote after that kind of first glut that I was like, okay, these are actually legit. I'm going to hold them back too. I'm going to put that, they're going in a little pot somewhere for later. They'll be seen by somebody. But like, there was just a whole bunch that I was playing them at the first Americana Fest. Some came out, only 6 came out on an EP, but I was playing a lot more of those songs. And that was just me kind of I hadn't been playing guitar for very long. I'd only been playing since The Fire. And so, because the whole thing I was talking about being dependent, right?
Right.
Like, part of my setup was that it was important for me to be dependent on some of my co-writers. If I ever picked up a guitar, the first thing was, you must laugh at her. You must try and put her down. You must keep her away from being completely independent because she already has all the lyrics and melody. If I have the chords, what do I have? 100% of the publishing. And so that is not what anyone wanted. And I was like, hey, I can share. But it was an ego thing. And so that part of it was me actually learning to play the guitar, then getting some of the ideas out of my head until I felt that I was going to be back at the match fitness that I could be at when I was collaborating and writing songs that charted or writing songs for artists.
So
collaboration
artists. With Dan Auerbach was completely different, right?
Yeah, but it was like something that I've been doing for such a long time. So it was like, I can do that. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep playing this thing. So, it's been like a gift, not only in finding someone who's musically about a lot of the things that I was certainly looking for from a debut, like to set my stall out in this way, but sonically as well, obviously, just superior, let's put it that way. Like sonically, like the way his record sounded, it ignited me. And so I was really saved by that scenario. And simultaneously, I was able to maybe like work up my match fitness again because I hadn't been in an environment like that for a little while. Like that was kind of creatively kind of guitar-based music, and so I just need to get back into that thought process, and it's been a really long arc to getting back to the same place I was, but with some sense of agency.
So it's you and Dan sitting around a table, 5 days of songwriting. You write close to 30 songs, and every hour or so, the door opens and another legendary songwriter comes in to join the party.
Yeah, I think like we just like the revolving door of legends. It was very much like that, you know. We'd write and the door would open, Roger Cook come in, and then he'd be like, okay, cool, we've got a couple ideas out, and then Dan Penn would walk in and we're like, okay, it's like that, is it? And then we'd write a couple ideas, and then like, you know, off we go. Bobby Wood would come in. Joe Allen would come in. We had just all of this breadth of legendary status coming through the door. And I was just sitting there feeling lucky as hell.
Well, this time the collaboration had you at the center, and we couldn't be happier for you.
Well, thank you.
It is a brilliant new record. It's called Walk Through Fire, Yola, and she's going to be performing tonight with Casey Musgraves at Starlight. We would love to have one more song if we could.
Yeah. We're going to play a song we don't normally get to do in promo. I decided to make a change for you people. And so here you are. This one's called Lonely the Night. All I have is gone now. Goodbye fell too hard and too soon. One more night until tomorrow to get through. Talking to your shadow in my room. Oh, the stars are crying. They know they broke their promise to me. Once upon a time I wished for a love like you, but I guess sometimes wishes don't come true. Broken hearts live alone. No one sees, no one knows what they know. Lonely the night, lonely the night, only the night belongs to those who've lost their love. Time can heal, so they tell me, but I don't think I'll be that long. One more night feels like eternity right now, and every passing minute pulls me down. Empty arms could never hold. No one sees, no one knows what they know. Lonely the night, lonely the night, only the night belongs to those
was really spectacular.
Thank you very much.
That's unbelievably good. The song "Lonely the Night," that is, of course, from Yola's "Walk Through Fire," and I believe that they will have that tonight at the merch table.
Yes, they will. If you're coming to the Casey show, which you should be, yeah, I'll be after my show, darting straight over to the merch table to sign and say hello to the fine people of Kansas City. And so, yeah, I'll be selling that.
Thank you so much for taking the time today. I know it's a busy day, and you squeezed this in. It's a true gift, and we really deeply appreciate it.
It's been an utter joy. So thanks for having us.
All right. Yola, live on the bridge.